You're absolutely worthy of living a life of alignment, and that is out there for you. That timeline exists. Hello, my sweet loves. This video is for any of us who feel tender in a world that often feels too loud, too fast, too harsh, too hard. How to stay soft in a hard world. It feels like Western culture encourages hardness. For much of my life, I felt like I was too sensitive. I would hear rhetorics like, you just need to toughen up, you just need to move on, you're too sensitive. I spent the majority of my life trying to harden these soft parts of me, but now I'm finally at a place, I don't see that softness and vulnerability as something that needs to be toughened up. I see it as my superpower. Being soft means that I'm receptive, I'm sensitive to beauty. My softness allows me to empathize with other beings. It allows me to nurture and care for people around me. It allows me to nurture and care for myself. It shows up in my life in so many ways. It shows up in motherhood. It shows up in my relationships with my friends. It shows up in the way I move about life slowly. I'm the type of person to say thank you to the trees and express my gratitude to the forest. I'm the type of person who loves a long hug from a friend, and I absolutely love that about myself. The world celebrates hustle and hardness, but they forget the power in softness. For a long time, I thought I had to toughen up to be accepted. And there are still times when I feel like being emotional may get me taken a little bit less seriously, but I'm allowing myself to feel that way anyway. Instead of swallowing my feelings to be small or to keep the room peaceful, I now realize that my emotions are sacred messengers. Hustle culture and capitalism are certainly at the forefront of reasons I've been encouraged not to be soft in my life. And I realize now that's not my fault. So if you're feeling the same way, that's not your fault either. We live in a culture that expects us to constantly be performing, constantly be moving, to be able to go to hell and back and turn around and clock into work the next day. Even outside of hustle culture, when we think of the current world climate, particularly the climate in the USA, and when I say climate, I'm not talking about the weather, you feel me? It feels even harder to be soft and to trust the universe and trust what is coming next, but softness is more important now than ever. In fact, I think that staying soft in this crazy world is a form of rebellion and an act of resistance, and that in itself is a reason to embrace it. In order to live more softly, you first need to know that you are worthy of a life that is in alignment with that. It took me years to come to this realization myself. It took a lot of work and a lot of therapy, and I still wake up sometimes and have to remind myself of that, so don't feel guilty if it doesn't click right away, but know that you are worthy. You're absolutely worthy of living a life of alignment, and that is out there for you. That timeline exists. Somatic work, affirmations, and just being in groups of people who truly value me has helped heal some of those self-worth wounds within me. I'm not gonna pretend that they don't still exist and that these voices don't come into my head and tell me I'm not worthy, because it does happen to me, but it happens so much less than it used to. And with the proper work, you can get there too. In order to me to move into my soft life journey and find friends that truly made me feel value, I had to rethink where I was finding my friends. For a long time, I just made friends through either wherever I worked at the time or through partying. I have learned now that that is not the best way for me to make friends. Personally, I make friends better when there is a little bit of a structured activity. So whether that is a workshop where we are usually using our hands and learning to do something, through volunteer projects, through yoga, even at dinner parties or events where there is a little bit more of a theme. So sometimes if I get invited to somebody's birthday or to hang out with a group of people at the park, because I'm more of a one-on-one person, I will bring something with me. I love the game Are We Really Strangers for icebreakers, but just having something to do helps break the ice and create conversation. And then you also know that you're making friends who align with your values and will appreciate you for your values when there is a similar interest there. When you start living in alignment, you're able to rise out of survival mode. I should know, I was in survival mode for so long and my nervous system was so out of whack that I had all these barriers against my softness that I had created as protection. We create these protections for a reason, like literally to protect ourselves, and typically we needed that at one time, but what happens is our brain will start to remember different things and different triggers as the trauma itself. So then we become closed off to all these other opportunities to be soft and to be open and to let our emotions free. When it is safe, our brain is telling us, they call it like the lizard brain because it's the fight, flight, freeze response system, and it doesn't go based off logic. It goes based off, like, I think this is a trauma, so I'm going to treat it as a trauma. There's a lot of different works and things that you can do to help with that. I always recommend therapy if it is available to you. I know that it's not accessible to everybody. There's a book, My Grandmother's Hands and the Body Keeps Score. My Grandmother's Hands goes really deep into what he calls the lizard brain, and the author also recommends a lot of different options and activities to regulate the nervous system that I find very helpful. But it's interesting because we can actually inherit trauma responses into our lizard brain based on traumas that we didn't even live through. They can actually be passed down through DNA. So it's really doing the work to kind of unravel these. Journaling, if you've been here before, you know I talk, oops. You know I talk about journaling, movement, exercise. I love yoga, but that can be really helpful, meditation, etc. And you all, I truly believe that nature helps me live my best soft life. I avoided nature for a portion of my life because I was so afraid of bugs, like unnecessarily afraid of bugs, that I started to avoid nature. And once I returned, I could not get enough. It felt like layers. Just felt like all these layers were unpeeling. It is so healing and soft to be in nature, to be one with nature. Oh my God. I think the biggest thing about being in nature is you can't rush. It pushes you, forces you out of that hustle culture and into a slower pace. And I really think that slowness and stillness are so important to live a soft life, because when you're always moving, when you're always going quickly, it's really hard to tap into the emotions. When you're always busy doing something, you're not fully aware of which emotions that you're having. I really like to feel the entirety of my emotions when I can. It doesn't always feel safe to, but more and more trying to just stop and give myself time to feel through my emotions. I am still working on detaching from them a little bit more and not getting caught up, especially in the sadness. But I think it's so important. I have a lot of memories of my dad being emotional, not in, we always like to say emotional as if it's this bad thing, and it's not. It's beautiful, especially for men. Society tells men so often that it's not okay to cry, it's not okay to have emotions, which is just simply not true. It takes a real man to be able to stand in his emotions and to sit with his emotions. But I just remember my dad would get emotional, happy or sad, but there were often, you know, just a couple tears streaming down his face. And maybe ironically, maybe not, also a very gentle person who moved very slowly throughout the world. I think that there is a connection between people who live a slower life and the softness and the emotional awareness. One thing that I have found really important to keep my softness is to remember that the world is a beautiful place. It is easy to spiral on the news or social media. A lot of that is valid because there is a lot of scary stuff happening in the world right now. But I have to always remind myself the world is good. This may sound mythological or a fairy tale to some people, but I truly believe that good usually wins. I was listening to the Ram Dass podcast, and in one of his talks he mentioned how he met with the environmentalist who ties himself to trees to save the Amazon. The environmentalist had basically told Ram Dass that the Amazon was past the point of repair according to science and everything else. And Ram Dass said, well, that sounds concerning. What do you think of that? And the environmentalist replied, I'm not too concerned because miracles happen all the time. Our existence on this earth, on this planet, is of itself a miracle. So I try to keep my mindset like that. I try to assume the best in people. And that's not to say that we do so without boundaries. I have definitely had to learn boundaries because there's a million ways to get hurt when you're assuming the best. So I mean, be smart about it, but generally I try to assume the best in humanity. I try to really put my focus on that because it's easy when we're focused focusing on the bad and all the harsh realities of this world. And I'm not saying pretend that they don't exist, because they do, and we're not ignorant over here. They do exist and there's ways to help, but really focus on the joyful. I do this every day with the media I consume, the books I consume, etc., because it allows me to have hope for the future. It allows me to be soft. It allows me to offer, to help others, and to give back. And I just think the world needs this. The world needs your soft essence more than ever before. Also, the soft angels of the world are accepting help. They are saying yes when people offer to help. We don't need to be hyper independent. We all need some help from community, from family, from friends in order to survive, and it's not a bad thing to ask for help when you need it. This can be as simple as if a neighbor offers to help you carry something up to your apartment. You have a trusted friend or family offering to babysit or to bring dinner over. Maybe you're hosting and somebody says, "What can I bring?" It's okay to delegate these tasks. When we make space to be supported, we're able to soften up more. Also, soft girls rest. Sleep should be a priority. There are going to be times when you can't get all the sleep. Honestly, I limit these to a few times a year. Sleep is so important to me that I will prioritize 8 hours of sleep over a lot of other things, because when I don't have enough sleep, I can't function. That's when I'm getting lost in the emotions instead of softly allowing them to flow to me and then through me. Sitting and scrolling on your phone is not rest. It is not rest. Your brain is not resting when you're doing that. Sleeping is a form of rest. Reading a poem book, creating art, etc. I believe these are all forms of rest, and I believe that they are all important. You are deserving of rest, and remember, you don't have to earn rest. Rest is not a privilege you get because you completed a project or did X, Y, or Z. Rest is a right and a need. Healthy relationships are so important to soft beings. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've been in relationships that caused me to close off emotionally and build these walls. In fact, it was a toxic relationship that pushed me the furthest out of my softness that I had ever been, and I had to do a lot of work to get back to softness. Be so discerning with who you become involved with. This goes for platonic relationships, but I would say especially romance and lovers. I have had to learn the hard way, and you may have to learn the hard way too. Maybe you're like me, but I hope that you don't. As a more energetically aware spiritual girly, there are certain boundaries and things I can no longer do that for a long time I thought I could do. One of them is casual dating. In particular, trying to date multiple people, especially on the dating apps. Usually you are dating multiple people because you're not really committed to them. And for a while I thought that if I just did this while being celibate, I would still be protecting my energy. No, For us softies, it's really not for us. I felt so drained, and it also drained my creativity. I was literally tired, exhausted. Even when I'm casually dating to get to know somebody, it really has to be one person for me. I don't have the energy. Another boundary is I do not go to the club. I've thought about this though. I might if I'm on vacation somewhere, but even then I'm not sure. I used to try and go clubbing and stuff with my friends, mainly because I thought that was how you made friends as a girl, as an adult. Let me tell you, when I stopped clubbing, the friends I've made have been so much more solid than the ones I was going clubbing with anyway. For me, in order to be at the club and have a good time, I had to be really drunk, because if I was not really drunk, I was just too aware of the energy and everything going on around that I was not having a good time at all. As a general rule, if you have to be drunk to enjoy anything, it probably means that you shouldn't do it. Whatever you're doing is not in alignment with you. Once again, it's taken me a long time in my life to learn some of these seemingly obvious lessons. But as a soft girly, that's a boundary. I don't really do clubs. If I know that certain birthday parties and stuff, the focus is just going to be drinking and gossiping, I can't. Gossip really isn't my thing either. Even too much small talk, I want to skip ahead and get very deep and know the depths of your soul. But just know it's okay to say no to these things. As a soft girl, the start of my day feels so important too. I love to have a slow morning versus versus one where I'm feeling rushed to get up and get out of the house. So I prioritize this, but not being rushed or hurried. Oh my gosh, it does something for the nervous system. I used to be chronically late and also chronically stressed. Now I am leaving the house a lot earlier, usually earlier than I need to get somewhere. I will just bring my journal or a book or listen to an audiobook on my car, etc. That way I have something to do to kill time when I do end up places a little bit early. Anything we can do to give us less stress helps with being soft, because when we're constantly stressed, we kind of have to turn off the emotional side a little bit to protect ourselves from, you know, constantly being freaked out. So avoiding stressful situations when I can is very helpful. I just want to remind you, it is so beautiful to be soft in this world. We don't have to harden to survive or to conform. When we lean into our softness, we're able to connect so deeply with others, which leads to more lasting and better quality friendships. I'm at a point in my life where I feel like I have way fewer friends than I ever used to as I've leaned more into my softness, but the friendships that I do have, I'm obsessed with those friendships. Like, they feel so good and so in alignment. When we're soft and vulnerable and express what we need, it can be scary as a soft person. I have a lot of rejection sensitivity that has led me in life to be afraid to ask for certain things. As a soft girly, I'm also coming to terms with saying no to more and more. Being overbooked is like crazy to me. I need my time to sleep, to be alone, to refresh. Having awareness of when I book appointments, that way I'm not running around quite as much. It's okay to say no to social activities. For a long time, I had a hard time making friends, so I felt like I had to say yes to everything in order to keep getting invited. But the fact of it is, people who cherish you will continue to invite you. Be soft loudly, and by loudly I mean in a way that's powerful, not necessarily like loud volume, and just make ourselves visible, because it gives permission to other soft souls to open up and let some of those hardened walls fall down to embody themselves and embody their softness. The world needs more love. The world needs more empathy. You are allowed to stay soft and you can thrive in your softness. I want to end this with a passage that I wrote down from a book called Dear Lover by David. I cannot remember his last name off the top of my head. I will put the book information. Your concern for career and self-sufficiency is obviously healthy, but your deepest fulfillment may await risking your heart wide open, offering your bright love to all beings, and giving yourself to be claimed by a man or partner of integrity, by a family of beloveds, and by a world that needs your love. Love is the only way to live that won't leave your feminine heart feeling unseen, ungiven, empty, and wanting. Stay soft.